Testing, testing, testing. One, two, three. Testing, testing, testing. All right, I am live. Um, Welcome everyone to Wednesday show, um, known as the World Turns. Wednesdays are our geopolitics talk. Today is June 6th, 2018. Today we have some for you today. We're going to be talking about China, Colombia. We are also going to be talking about Qatar and a few other things. Once you come in, please give the video a like. What else? I hope everyone is having a great day today. Like I said, today is Wednesday. It's been a good day today here in Chicago. Nice weather today. Can't complain. Kicking into summer. So yeah, I'll just wait a few minutes for everyone to come in, for the link to go out, and for people to um, get prepared. One of the first things we're going to be talking about is Qatar. I have a few YouTube videos. Of course, I don't want to play the YouTube videos, but I found some links of articles that talks about some of the interviews that will bring up today in from the YouTube videos. So, one more minute or so, and we can get into it. Hope everyone that's looking at this in the future, hope you're doing well. I'm going to name the the Wednesday show. Instead of Geopolitic Wednesday, I'll just say As the World Turns. And in parentheses, I'll just put the date. So that'll let you know which date of the As the World Turns you are looking at. Well, or looking at or searching for. So let me just share my screen. Okay. We'll just hop into it. This is from Al Jazeera. Um, this is a politics piece. Understanding the blockade against Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Egypt severed diplomatic and trade ties with Qatar 1 year ago. This is an article from June 5th, yesterday, and it's by Aliyah Choktai. How did it start? On May 23rd, 2017, Qatar woke up to news of a hack attributing false statements to the Emir of Qatar. The fake remarks were aired on several UAE and Saudi owned networks in the Gulf, sparking a diplomatic breakdown. The incident came just 2 days after U.S. President Donald Trump met Arab and Muslim leaders in Riyadh. On May 24th, authorities in Saudi Arabia and the UAE also blocked Al Jazeera's website. Um, Authorities in Saudi Arabia and okay. On June 5th, early morning, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Egypt issued statements announcing the severing of diplomatic relations with Qatar. Saudi Arabia then shuts its land borders with Qatar, and together with three other countries, imposed a land, sea, and air embargo on Qatar. On June 7, Jordan also announced that it would scale back its diplomatic ties with Qatar and shut down the Al Jazeera bureau in Amman. Why did these countries cut ties with Qatar? The four countries have claimed that Qatar worked to support terrorism, maintained too close relations with Iran, and meddled in the internal affairs of their countries. And I want to look up a few things. As we know, embargo means an official ban on trade or other commercial activity with a particular country. And we are going to zoom in here so you can understand where Qatar is. That's too close. Okay, this is Qatar. This little piece of land that's protruding out into the Persian Gulf. This is Qatar. This, let's see here. Bahrain, as you can see, is close, but Bahrain is much smaller, and it's right next door to Qatar. And the article said Saudi Arabia, the UAE, which is right here, Dubai is in the UAE. You see United Arab Emirates. Jordan said it's going to scale back. And there's another, I think that was all the countries. Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and of course, Egypt is right here. So you got Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Egypt, and you mentioned Jordan are going to place embargoes, sea, land, and air embargoes on Qatar because this was last year, but recently there was a I saw a YouTube video which said that Qatar is purchasing S-400 uh, 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 SAMs. Hello, okay, we got another. Hello, how you doing, Mike?
Hey, what's going on, brother?
I'm good. I'm good. All right, all right. Yeah, I'm just getting started. I was talking about the YouTube video, the Qatar. Is Saudi Arabia is talking about. Um, I saw the video. The Qatar purchased S-400 surface air missiles, SAM missiles from Russia, the same ones India we talked about last week. India purchased from Russia, and now Qatar purchased them from Russia. And Saudi Arabia didn't take that too kindly. They think, I guess, because Qatar is purchasing them, they are thinking that Qatar may invade Saudi Arabia or some of the other uh, Gulf states.
So it's actually the other way around. Qatar is worried about being invaded by the other members of the GCC, which is the Emiratis and Saudi Arabia, the two main contenders of the GCC. They were accused of financing terrorism in Syria last year.
Mm.
The reality is that Qatar has a strong relationship with Iran, and that doesn't sit well with Riyadh, which is the capital of Saudi Arabia, and it doesn't sit well with the Emiratis, which is the UAE. Right. So what they're doing right now is they're trying to isolate Qatar because in order for Qatari residents to get out, or even their air traffic, they have to go through Saudi Arabia. So they're trying to squeeze Qatar into submission. The difference here is that Qatar has friends. They ran to Moscow. So they ran to Moscow to go get some help from the Russians, geopolitically speaking. And they also have the advantage of using Iran's airspace and their flight paths to get out from a travel perspective. And Saudi Arabia thinks that they're going to actually squeeze these guys until they submit, and it's not going to happen. The other factor is that the Qataris and Turkey are supporters of the Muslim Brotherhood. So Egypt, who had a president, which is Mohamed Morsi, a few years ago, through the first democratic elections, was a member of the Muslim Brotherhood, and the military formed a coup in Egypt and overthrew Mohamed Morsi. So there's a lot of conflict in between Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, the Emiratis, and Qatar, because Qatar has a strong weapon, which is Al Jazeera, and Al Jazeera has been used to bring down other governments around the Middle East and North Africa.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. In the interview, the foreign minister to Qatar, is that me? That's echoing.
No.
Okay. The foreign minister to Qatar was saying that I think the interviewer was asking, what if Saudi Arabia invades Qatar? But the foreign minister to Qatar was saying that that would uh, uh, according to the GCC agreements, that that would go against the GCC agreements if Saudi Arabia were to choose to invade Qatar because of them purchasing the S-400s from Russia. And the interviewer was also asking that, of course, Qatar has a large American Air Force base, but he was saying, the foreign minister was saying that per the deal with Qatar and the U.S. for that large Air Force base, because the Air Force base in Qatar, I think, is one of the largest in the region, American Air Force bases, that is. He was saying that per the agreement, that if Qatar were to get into a scuffle, that America would not immediately get into it, and that the first line of defense is of course, the Qatari military, um, and that if before things were to escalate, then they would, go to they would, of course, use the political route to get out of it before it would even escalate to a point of using military force.
The difference here is that it wouldn't just be Saudi Arabia going in; it would be multiple militaries going in, such as Egypt, such as the Emiratis, such as Bahrain. You get 2,000, 3,000 tanks coming across your border. You really don't have a fighting chance if you're Qatar, because your last line of recourse is the water itself, and if they back you down, they're going to back you right into the water, and it's, there's only one way out of that, and that's through diplomacy. So Qatar's not ready to get into a fight. I mean, obviously they need the military to defend themselves, but they're not ready for a fight at all. They've never been in an actual conflict at all. So I mean, Saudi Arabia is having a hard time dealing with Yemen. So I don't doubt that they would have a hard time going against Qatar, because the Qataris spend a lot of money on military equipment. So I mean, their first line of defense would be cyber warfare capability to take out most of Saudi Arabia's infrastructure that's in place.
Okay, yeah, because I'm looking at the map, and Qatar is pretty small compared to Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates, but it's many times as big as Bahrain. But yeah, if they share borders with, the only land border they share with is Saudi Arabia, and like you said, once you got X amount of tanks coming across that border, there's nowhere they can go except the land. And go ahead.
Well, you have asymmetric warfare, so they would have to line up that border first, and don't forget that Turkey has a military base inside Qatar. So for obvious reasons, that they're part of the Muslim Brotherhood, so they have a vested interest in protecting Qatar as well. don't be fooled by what you see on the map. That just because Saudi Arabia is bigger than Qatar doesn't mean that Saudi Arabia can't be taken down, because they're very weak militarily speaking, and they have a lot of assets that they need to protect that can't 100% be protected. So Saudi Aramco, which is their lifeblood for their revenue, could be easily taken down. So either a cyber attack or a physical attack, through ballistic missiles. Those surface-to-air missiles from the S-400 that they want to purchase is primarily because they're worried that you have an aerial assault could easily take down Qatar. So they need as many deterrences to keep surrounding countries from trying to go in. On top of the fact that they do have the United States military base there, but that military base moved from Saudi Arabia into Qatar for the Gulf War.
Okay. Now, if things hypothetically speaking, if things were to kick off, Iran is right across from Qatar in the Persian Gulf. Would Iran, since they have strong ties, Qatar and Iran, would Iran help Qatar in some way?
Not necessarily. Not unless Iranian assets are being threatened. Iran can't fight a war for Qatar without getting some kind of concessions out of it. And they don't have a military agreement between each other. Now, Syria and Iran have a military agreement, but Qatar does not, because Qatar is pretty isolated. Geopolitically speaking, they don't really have a whole lot of vested interest in other countries militarily.
Except for themselves. They all for themselves, it seems like.
Yeah, they're kind of. I mean, it's a selfish policy, but that's the only way they can actually win. You have to remember that Qatar is actually a made up country. It's largely built on sand, built on sand, and the sand is largely built on top of the water. So they don't. They're an artificial state, so to speak.
Okay. Because I'm looking at, I know I saw a video of its capital of Doha, and Doha is, pull up some photos here really quick, images. Doha looks very nice in terms of it visually looking very nice, and a lot of that, of course, is from oil, and the oil reserves are drying up, and it's going to continue to dry up. But
especially gas.
Yeah, gas. And say, it's nothing but desert out there. They have desert storm. Am I saying that right? Desert storms? Because when I say that, I feel like I'm saying of the war.
Are you talking about desertification?
No, the storms, the sandstorms.
Sandstorms.
Yeah.
Sandstorms, yeah.
Yeah. And click on this one right here. I think this is a good one. But yeah, it if you look at just this photo, just in the background, it's nothing but sand. It's not really a lot of green. Well, non-man-made green areas. It's just a lot of sand. So, of course, I said it to say they have to keep that up. They have to keep that desert from encroaching or reclaiming the land, should I say?
Well, there's only a couple million people there. There's only about 2 million people inside Qatar, including the military.
Really? Okay.
It's not that many people there. So that's why I said before, if you get 2,000 tanks coming across your border, you're pretty much finished. You better negotiate your way out of that. But looking at some of the hardware that Qatar has, they have a lot of coastal battery missile systems, to keep warships from invading. And they have a lot of howitzers and things of that nature used for taking out tank artillery that tries to come across the border. So if they were to get into a conflict with Saudi Arabia, they would have to meet them at the border or cross right into Saudi Arabia and just start taking them out one by one, take out all their assets.
Mm. So they would have to be proactive instead of reactive.
Right. They would have to do the same thing that Israel did in 1967, which is take out all of the Air Force assets that the surrounding countries had, Egypt and Syria and Jordan at the time. They took out all their assets in one single day.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, we will be keeping an eye on this and see to of course this embargo has been going on for a year, but recently this specific topic a bit I can say escalating a little bit of the the surrounding states, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Egypt being unsettled, settling of them, Qatar purchasing the S-400s from Russia. The
Don't
other,
and
go ahead.
keep in mind that Turkey also uh, requested the S-400 missile system from Russia as well. Just only a few months ago or last year, but now the United States have said that if you buy that S-400 missile systems, then you can't get the F-35, which is their top of the line fighter jet, right?
Mhm.
So the last few hours, Turkey has been in discussions with Russia to purchase the Su-57, the Sukhoi 57 fifth generation fighter jet, which is the equivalent of a F-35.
Okay. So they would get both the S-400 and that fifth generation fighter jet.
Correct.
Mm, that's a pretty good deal. Um, the other point, this comes from CGTN. This is an opinion piece. The new China as threat narrative, and this come from another YouTube video you sent out. It was about China. I saw the video. It was kind of hard for me to follow. I know he was interviewing the Colonel General. I forgot his title. It was kind of hard for me to follow. I'll admit because I guess because how they were pronouncing a few things. But I found this article. I'm going to read it. This is by Professor Matri Macaria Monin. This is from again. This is from March 19th from CGTN. China is a big country in terms of geography and uh, demography, but its size and influence is more than just a territory and population. China is now a major economic and geopolitical force in the world. And it can be argued that China's rise has come at an expense of European cultures, many mostly Western European and North American, who now see China as a threat to their self-appointed role as world decision makers and shapers of global opinion. The Europeans and their allies in North America initially ignored signs of the rise from China mainly because of racism that, in their mind, places Euro culture above everything else. The self reassuring racism, the belief that people who are not of European extraction cannot positively contribute to society, made them sleepy and blind to realities taking place. China noticed and took advantage of this and smoothly did something about it. China opened up and went out of its comfort zone, studied the United States and Britain, and learned from their global mistakes, but remained focused on its interests. A certain global presence called for strategy to avoid the mistakes that others make. China avoided racism and Western arrogance in dealing with people in other regions, particularly in Africa, as it asserted its presence as a global power player. This strategy is succeeding and enabling modern China to penetrate the rest of the world without much fuss. It quietly flexes its geopolitical muscle while brilliantly downplaying its strength. When the Western powers woke up, they started complaining about some perceived new China threat without specifying what the old threat was. It turns out that the narrative of China as a threat is simply a reaction by former colonial powers in Africa trying to protect their perceived interests in previous colonial states. The threat narrative therefore targets Chinese success in Africa rather than in Europe. Subsequently, the impression that comes up is that the Europeans and the Americans would like to mediate African Chinese relations rather than have the two regions deal with each other directly. The West searched for a mediation role in the relations between African countries and China, however, flounders partly because it is racist and unreal. First, the former colonial master to suggest they can instruct African policymakers on what is good or bad for their countries is insulting to common sense. Suggesting China is a threat to African sovereignty simply implies that African leaders are stupid and therefore need guidance from colonial masters. Second, the narrative is itself an admission of European inadequacies when it comes to changing global dynamics in which each country is looking for its geopolitical niche in world power realignment. Third, it shows that Europe and the US are stuck in an old era of global politics and therefore out of tune with reality. In contrast, in avoiding racism overtones, China appears to have adjusted to the changing realities so well that it ends up offering guidance to the rest of the world. China's emergence as player on the global stage came in phases and demonstrates how China plans to advance and protect Chinese interests. This strategy shows China as outward looking. It is particularly focused in promoting President Xi Jinping's idea of socialism with Chinese characteristics for the new era that stresses advancing Chinese interests beyond Chinese borders. African states like those in Europe or the Americas, African states, okay, like those in Europe or the Americas are beyond Chinese borders. The Europeans are extremely concerned with visible successes of Xi Jinping's global dual strategy of One Belt, One Road initiative and the common destiny of shared values that is in deep contrast with growing white nationalist isolationism. The largely white narrative on the new China threat in Africa, therefore, is based on geopolitical envy and racism, and is not likely to succeed. Europe and North American Europe and North America will try to figure out how to advance and protect their pur- purported interest in Africa by discrediting China through its threat narrative. The narrative is simply one of the tools. It is doubtful whether the strategy will work well in the long run because the African countries are also looking for their interests the best way they know how. Many African countries see interacting with a China that wants to do business with them as one of the best ways to do that. Uh, yeah, so that's the article. I know the video was a little different. It was more talking about the narrative as China as a threat in terms of a global power. And I know this article was talking about China as a threat when it comes to them turns to African Chinese relations. But the article, not the article, but the video, the general, I think that's his title. The general was basically saying that China is not really the next superpower. It's really Russia. That was the next superpower, but I forgot he mentioned the ways that they came up with the narrative of China as being the next superpower is because I guess they work with 130 countries and they're taking advantage of 130 countries to that effect. Like I said, it was kind of hard for me to follow, but did see the whole interview. Now, what made you interested in this video that you sent out?
Well, this is the writing on the wall that China is on the come up, and they're afraid and when I say they is the United States and European powers are afraid that their version of capitalism is going to go away. It's being encroached upon by the Chinese, because the Chinese are actually, as the Chinese start to progress up the ladder, they're bringing Africa along with them. So all the infrastructure that you see in Africa is largely due to the fact that Chinese investment has come along and Chinese labor has come along to pull Africa away from Western powers, which is that of Brussels and London
France.
and DC.
Yeah.
Brussels is a center. Brussels is the center of the European Union, and they feel that they feel that this is unrealistic, that China can come along and just basically displace Europeans, but this is actually happening, right? That this is actually taking place on the ground. It's not some pie in the eye type of idea that, well, one of these days, China may actually be a world power. Actually, they are becoming a world power as we speak, through economics. And this is the fault of white supremacy, geopolitically speaking, because if they were so concerned about other opposing other adversaries and rivals coming to the table, why didn't they pull African Americans as well as Africans and Latin America all together up together as they grow as a world power? They didn't do that. They left them behind and left them to starve. So naturally, Africa needed a reliable partner, and that reliable partner became China and Russia. Russia dumped a lot of technology into Africa, and China put a lot of money into Africa. So African satellites are largely due to Russian technology.
Now, let me go back to the map. I understand that, of course, I agree that China is an up and coming power. Obviously, you pay attention to the news, the moves they're making, the political and economic moves they're making is obvious, especially moves within Africa, such as Kenya. Really, a lot in Kenya, and East Africa itself also. Do you think that the the investments that China is putting into Africa obviously is not out of, hey, the kindness of their heart. It's going to come with a price, but do you think that price is too steep for Africa to pay after after the infrastructure is fixed and China wants to be repaid back?
They're actually repaying them back as we speak. So it's not like they borrowed a lump sum of money from a pawn shop and they can't afford to pay it back. They're actually paying it back as they speak. So some of the agreements that they had, that Africa and China has in exchange, is that for the resources that Africa has, China will come up and build up the infrastructure of Africa in most African states. And if you watch the video that I sent about the Ugandan president, he talks about having even trade between Africa and between Uganda in particular and China. So $800 million or $8 billion or whatever it is, trade that goes from China into Africa. Well, Africa needs to have even exchange with them. So some of the goods that Africa manufacturers have to go back into China as well. So those are the deals that they're working out. So it's not as if Africans will be deadbeats if they can't pay the loans back. There's already preconcessions and preambles in place to mitigate against any sort of default and debts and swaps of that nature. It's not like the IMF coming in and enforcing these ideas on them where they have to accept, same-sex marriage and things of that nature. That was the problem with the United States, is they tried to beat that into Africa of having same-sex marriage, and the Africans basically told the United States to go take a hike.
Okay. Good. Now, also in view, the interview was talking about the border China shares 14 countries, and of those 14 countries, 2 are still, you could say, disputed. Well, not borders in terms of borders being disputed, but the peace at the borders. And one of those borders that was still being talked about is the China and Indian border. And again, like I said, I couldn't really, it didn't catch the interview. I couldn't really follow along, but I did hear bits and pieces. Well, I saw the entire interview, but as far as things that stuck, it was bits and pieces. Now, as far as the China Indian border, I know they spoke about that, and that was one of the 2 borders. I think that and Bhutan. He said, he mentioned that the Bhutan border is small, comparatively speaking to other borders, but the China and Indian border, what what about that he spoke on? Hello, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, as far as the China Indian border, what about that did he speak on? And
It has a lot to do with resources on the border as well. So if you don't define your borders, then then what happens is it becomes ambiguous as a state. And India and China, have, and Russia too. You can include the Russians in there as well. China has battled Russia in the 70s over border disputes, and as well as India battling China over border disputes and land disputes. Um, yeah, I mean, obviously China is starting to assert themselves, and that's natural for a growing power. So they're trying to assert themselves, and India is not one to back down because they're a nuclear power, just like China is. I don't think they'll ever use nuclear weapons against each other, but there has to be some clear lines of demarcation of where everybody stands. And if China wants to route their One Belt One Road project through, through some of this territory that India may be indifferent about, then obviously it's going to cause a conflict. I don't think that that's going to cause any future conflict in terms of military engagement, but obviously there's going to be some ideas of restitution of who, if you're occupying my territory, if you're occupying my land or my territory, then you're going to have to reimburse me for some of the some of the encroachment that you've had because it's not recognized by the United Nations at all. Um,
Now, one of the ports in the One Belt part of the Silk Road, one of the ports is in um, India, and I think it's Chennai right here. Is in India. I agree with you. I don't think it's going to escalate to the point of some type of battle or war because it's too much money to be lost in the this One Belt One Road system. And I do agree with you. If these borders are undefined, then of course China's going to have to pay up some money. But as far as the port in Chennai, I think they're working in Chennai in India, the southern India, in terms of the One Belt portion of the sea lane portion of the Silk Road. It's just too much money to be lost on the account of going to war over a border that can be um, settled. Hello.
yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was just saying 'cause it's too much money. I don't think it's gonna escalate to some type of war or battle just because you got a difference in opinion or on a border.
Well, don't forget that China and not China, but India and Pakistan have been included into the SCO, which is the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, that they just recently had in China just last week. So I think a lot of that, a lot of the tensions are just going to go away based on economics and geopolitics, because they're actually winning. You know, when China wins, everybody in that region wins too.
Mm. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. No, yeah, all rising tide raise all boats. It's like, okay, let's settle this because there's too much money on the table to be lost if we decide to, oh, I'm gonna send tanks across. No, it's too much. That's not a smart move. It's better to just, like you said, um, settle settle it, make it go away, and get these roads built that run through northern China and Pakistan, and that will go throughout the Middle East. So yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you on that. Mhm. Now, also in that video, what else were talked about? Those are basically only the two things I can remember from that video. What else was brought up in that video?
Actually, the the islands are the South China Sea. So the islands that uh, China has been largely building on these reefs are starting to be challenged by the United States, and United States is worried that with China putting up these man-made islands that can push out the United States from actually policing the area, because the further back the islands go, then more territory China can claim, and that can really cause a headache for the United States or even NATO trying to patrol that area.
Mm.
And the idea is that they're going to go in there and bomb that base, but like China was saying, like in the video, they were saying like that's not likely to happen without a response from China. And that's all China needs is an attack on those islands, um, to start a conflict with the United States.
And personally, I don't think America can afford a conflict with China, knowing that Russia will be in the mix, and the American military is already spread thin, and they're already having difficulty recruiting, doing recruiting. I just don't see, it escalate again, it escalating to that point. I just think there's going to be heavy politics is going to go on regarding that, regarding these man-made islands in the South China Sea.
Well, they will use their military resources to take that island if they have to, because what happens if that island, and more of those man-made islands are actually created, then what that does to the United States is it creates a no-fly zone against them. The United States doesn't want that. They want to be able to fly and sail whatever they want.
Mm.
So the first objective would be to take that island as soon as possible. But the problem is that there's all types of surface-to-air missiles on some of these man-made islands that keeps the United States from playing games in there.
Oh. Well, I'll, I'll put that on the board to look out for the South China Sea. Oh man. Okay. Now, what I think it was one more point that was discussed in that video, or am I mistaken?
No, I think that's the majority of it.
Okay. Yeah, like the article said, America's saying that China is the next is a threat. Obviously China is up and coming, but like the general said, the basis on which they're saying China is a threat is because they do trade with over 130 countries. But again, I do agree that China is a up and coming superpower. That's the clock on your wall has a made in China sticker. The chair you could be sitting on, it has a made in China sticker, and they do trade almost everywhere in the world. So with those economic resources, they can obviously put some things into motion. Now, this other video, I couldn't find a um, article to talk about it, but Uganda's president Yoweri, I can't pronounce his first name, but Yoweri Museveni, he he talks about some good things. He's been Ghana's president since was the 70s for 22 something years. And that's one thing about a lot of the African countries. Their presidents are in there for so long. How can they have a pulse uh, of what's going on to keep up with change in the country in terms of keeping up with modernity? I just don't see that. He's been in this. He's born in 1944. He's the same age as Trump and Hillary Clinton. You know.
Well, he doesn't run the country by himself. He has an administrative staff. You have all types of people that go out and do certain things for you. You have minister of communications and ministers of defense and things of that nature. So it's not like he's just doing it all by himself.
Well, yeah, that I understand. It's just I'm thinking in terms of how I yeah yeah maybe I'm just looking at it a one dimensional way. I'm just looking at him being there for so long and not looking at the support staff like you just mentioned.
Well, the difference between African politics and United States politics is that it doesn't matter who's in the White House; the policies stay the same. Whereas in Africa, the worry is if you replace this guy, what's going to come next? Because you don't know, the predictability of the next incumbent, right? So the United States, you kind of get the same thing no matter who's in office, whether it's Nixon or Kennedy. It's the same thing over and over and over. It's wash, rinse, and repeat. So the country largely is stabilized because the policies stay the same despite who's in office. Whereas in Africa, if you take one guy out, that can cause, like Libya, that can cause chaos throughout the whole country.
Okay. Now, in the article, he was talking about how, well, not the article, but the video, he was talking about how Uganda's politics are different compared to other East African countries, such as Kenya, its direct neighbor. Have Kenya and South Africa. It's more of a tribal system, where he was saying in Uganda, that doesn't specifically matter. It just coming. I'm just saying what he was saying, that doesn't specifically matter. It's more of politics and prosperity. Um, this, I'm just let you talk about it. These are just some of the points I got from the article.
Actually, before we talk about, we can welcome BGS into the
to
the circle as well.
Okay. Hello, how you doing, BGS? How you doing today?
What's going on? Just dropping in and see what you guys are talking about.
Yeah. First, we talked about the embargo and the on Qatar from Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Egypt. Then we transitioned to America saying China is a growing threat.
A growing threat. They've been a growing threat for 20 years. So how did they differentiate between now and then?
Well, that the article was saying that it was a good article from what when I read. It was saying that the European powers didn't differentiate what was the old threat. It was this narrative is more of a European white narrative. But I do agree with you. Like me and
There's a video I played from C-SPAN from 2004 called "China: the Gathering Threat."
Okay.
So that's 2004. They've been talking about China being a threat since 1997, when Soros and the Europeans tried to attack the Chinese yuan through the Thai baht. They tried to attack the whole all the Asian currencies at one time to actually take power away. So this has been an ongoing thing. It didn't just start.
Okay. Now Mike sent out the video. Uganda's president Museveni.
Mm-hmm.
He's talking about Uganda politics and the transition from Uganda from how he stabilized. His cabinet stabilized the economy of Uganda and their trade between Uganda and China.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, we basically China, because you had a different actor, China actually came in and stabilized it, because now you didn't have to worry about the European powers coming in and destabilizing countries, especially Great Britain.
Yeah.
Basically, Europe did not want Africa to develop. In fact, you read Walter Rodney how they underdeveloped on the African continent.
Now I remember when Britain left, they installed the Asians to be a buffer, but Idi Amin threw them out.
Yeah, talking about the Indians.
Yeah, Indians.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Mike, what made you what made this video stick out to you?
Well, essentially, he's talking about stabilizing Uganda
Mm-hmm.
when he says politics should lead to prosperity.
Mm-hmm.
So he's basically saying that every agenda that gets put on the table politically should lead to an advancement. And some of the stuff that he's talking about makes a lot of sense in terms of doing trade with China. That we shouldn't just accept Chinese goods coming into Uganda. That we should actually be sending out African goods into China as well. So those are things that he's working on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's the next step. Yeah, they've already did the first step. Now there's the next step, and plus what's going on with in the EU, because there's a lot of pressure, because the EU is actually starting to fall apart. There's a lot less pressure, so they can do more negotiation, especially if you look at what the Queen has actually started trying to get the Commonwealth back together. She's actually coming in, actually bartering in the background with all their former Commonwealth colonies. So so now it's more about doing business and less about politics or geopolitical politics, because now everybody has to come down and do business. So the Europeans and the Chinese and everybody has to come down and do business, which is something that hasn't happened. Well, really, it's never really happened in Africa until recently.
Now I applaud this move about Museveni. I remember stories. I remember reading articles on I forgot what kind of news outlet this was, but they were saying how China was importing products that other countries such as Australia, Canada, UK would not accept because of the standard, such as T-shirts that was dangerous for your health, toothpaste that was bad.
Yeah.
They were unloading these products onto Africa. But I do applaud this move that Museveni is saying. It should be even. It shouldn't you shouldn't just take, because that's going to come with a price tag that you may not be able to, or you may not want to pay back.
It's probably means you're in a better. Go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just going to say that it's not so much that they can't pay back, but they need to ship these goods out. They can't be a one-way relationship where China just keeps sending off these cheap goods to them, and Africans just have to keep consuming it. So then there needs to be a next step of bilateral trade. So it has to be even. It can't be 80-20 where only 20% of like cocoa beans or something like that just go out to China, and then 80% of dumb Chinese goods keeps propping up, dashikis made in China and whatnot. That's unacceptable from an economic standpoint.
Yeah, and also it's part of the deal. If you're going to, the only way to actually come through with your promise of The only reason you build an infrastructure is so that they can produce their own goods and actually can get in trade and export stuff. Otherwise, all that infrastructure that you built into Africa is wasted. You're going to have
Yeah.
to build them. In other words, you're going to have to make Africa China 2.0. You're going to have to take them through the same steps that they went through, and Africa and China has to move up the chain.
And
That's
I
what's
read
happening.
the introduction to the gold power and dollars, gold dollars and power, and it was saying, you know, you can't have a negative trade balance.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I do applaud his step in this, and I really do hope other African countries go the way he's going, if not do better in terms of their trade relationships with China or any other country.
Mm-hmm.
Which is good. Now, was there any other points that he that I didn't speak of that he pointed out in his interview, Mike?
Mike,
What?
you there? Oh, he's muted.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna go. It's the next one, which was good old Venezuela. It's about to get good. This is
I told you it was coming.
Yeah, and it's something else that this is going to lead into that we got pointed out. This is from France24.com. This is what's this article from May 16th. We are persecuted by KKK, Maduro says of Trump era. As Venezuela holds its presidential election on Sunday, President Nicolas Maduro's opponent has asked how the vote can possibly be fair amid ongoing repression as opposition leaders flee the country. The socialist leader sat down with France 24's Mark Perelman and in Caracas to answer the questions and many more in this interview. But per the interview, America is America is trying to come down. I remember you saying America can get most of its
not most of it, but I think it's like 15%.
Okay,
which is significant. Even though America is a net oil exporter now, so because of fracking, but basically Venezuela's been a major oil source for America for probably a good 40 years. And remember Citgo back in the day?
Yeah,
it was actually owned by Venezuela.
Really?
Yes.
Citgo.
Remember Citgo?
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, actually, they owned the refineries and they actually sold. And I don't know if they're still around or not, but they were actually owned by Venezuela.
Citgo.
Back in the day. I haven't been out, so I haven't really been around. So I don't really know if they're still around, but they're still around. They're still around. Yeah. I don't know if they still own them, but back in the 2000s that basically when we have this, I think it was right after the New Orleans, or two things after one. I think it was right after the New Orleans hurricane, and then the oil rig thing in the Gulf, and then they were lacking. The United States was kind of lacking on fuel, so actually Citgo actually started refining more Venezuelan oil to actually help shore up the American supply of gasoline and stuff like that. So just back in the day.
Now, what did you get from this interview, Mike?
Actually, it's a really good interview if you watch it. But Maduro is basically saying that the United States is planning a coup.
Well, yeah, through Colombia.
Ooh, yeah. This is getting good,
right?
Yeah.
Because now Colombia has joined NATO, but the basis of the interview is he's basically articulating that.
How does Colombia join NATO?
Oh, we gonna get to it. we gonna get to it.
What I'm saying is, it doesn't make sense. How is Colombia part of NATO?
Well, there's no other military bloc down there that they largely can make up. So NATO becomes the next objective for them.
Yeah, what I'm saying is
NATO's original purpose is null and void, right? But they have a repurpose now. They can go into Latin America.
Well, NATO's purpose has been null and void since 1989.
Right.
So that's damn near 30 years ago.
Well, I might as well read this article then.
No, no, go ahead and finish this one. We can get into it. What I'm saying is,
Okay.
it's this fact that just well, they're making up stuff. But go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. They go ahead, Mike. What were you saying?
But
Well,
actually, actually, there is a block called the Organization of American States. It was supposed to be,
it's not the military block though.
but they have done military functions, which is part of their charter.
Right. So, I mean, the basis of this interview, Maduro just articulating that the right wing is trying to take down socialism or the Bolivarian revolution inside
Oh
Venezuela.
yeah. Well, yeah, that's nothing new.
Right, and he's just basically securing his position going forward, and some of the policies that he has in place is going to alleviate some of the debt and some of the economic issues that they have been suffering from, especially with this petro yuan. You know, $20 billion in the petro yuan is actually going to help lift them out of poverty.
Hello? Hello, hello. Who was that?
Ulysses. You got noise in the background, Ulysses.
Shoot. Okay, go ahead.
I just muted him. He can come in when he got a lot of noise. But go ahead.
Yeah, so if you get a chance to watch that interview, it's actually really good. And to talk about this whole Colombia joining NATO, some years ago, before Chavez died and before Gaddafi was taken out, they were actually both talking about creating SATO, which is a South Atlantic Treaty Organization, as a counterweight to NATO. Ironically, both of them ended up dying before this can even take place.
It's getting good, gentlemen.
So what was there? So what was for okay? We can get into that later when we actually get to the article. So so what did he say? What did he say in the interview? That's because the right wing actually tried a coup back in 2003, I think it was. Where the right wing tried to actually have a coup and actually capture Chavez and held him captive for like a couple days, and then the army rallied and rescued him before the Americans could actually get in. So
right, it was actually 12 hours.
Yeah, with 12 hours. Yeah, okay.
They locked him up for 12 hours. But I mean, the interview is it's a charismatic interview between he and the interviewer. But it's definitely something worth watching if you get a chance.
Okay. I just want to see if there's something new that I hadn't heard before.
Yeah. Now like I said, that's the perfect way to transition or to segue into this article. Secretary General welcomes President of Colombia to NATO. And this is from NATO.int. This is May 31st, last month this year. Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg welcomes President Juan Manuel Santos of Colombia to NATO.
For talks. Oh, to NATO for talks. Okay.
Yeah. On Thursday, marking the first ever visit by a Colombian head of state to the alliance. Colombia is NATO's newest partner and its first in Latin America. Praising President Santos for his efforts to bring stability to Colombia, Mr. Stoltenberg said, "Our cooperation has provided real benefits both to Colombia and to NATO." He noted that Colombia worked side by side with NATO forces off the Horn of Africa in 2015.
You benefit from courses at NATO in school in Germany. Okay. All right. And the NATO Defense College. Okay. And Italy. Okay. So in other words, he's been to the School of Americas already. He's one of their plants.
Yeah. Helping to suppress piracy and secure international shipping lanes. The Secretary General also welcomed that NATO's Building Integrity Program has increased transparency and professionalism in Colombia's defense institutions, and that Colombian personnel have benefited from courses at the NATO school in Germany and the NATO Defense College in Italy. Looking to future cooperation, President Santos and Secretary General Stoltenberg agreed that NATO and Colombia should work together in areas of mutual interest, including cyber defense, demining, and promoting the role of women in peace and security.
Mm-hmm.
NATO is committed to working with partners like Colombia that share our values and interests, said, said the Secretary General, adding, our support comes at the request of the Colombian government, and NATO will always respect your autonomy and your independence.
Mm-hmm.
NATO's cooperation with Colombia has been developing steadily since 2013, and Colombia officially became a partner country in May 2017. NATO works with more than 40 partner countries around the world to promote international peace and security. So, have at it.
I just hope we don't get another crack cocaine era drug war in the black community behind this shit. How they gonna fund this?
Well, usually NATO states have to pay their own way, right? So I don't know if Americans actually have to pay for this.
We did.
They have enough exports coming out of. Excuse me.
Yeah, we did the last time.
Well, most European countries are actually starting to pay now under Trump, but before, obviously it was being largely funded by United States and UK. But I think a part of this puzzle. I think a part of this puzzle is that they need to block China from moving up through Latin America.
And that's a little late.
As well as Venezuela, to immobilize Venezuela.
That's a little late. That's a little late. That's way too late. You talk about if you're going to start block China from moving up through Latin America, you should have started in the early 2000s. It's a little late. They're already embedded. They're already embedded in Panama. They're already embedded in Costa Rica. They're embedded in Mexico already.
Right. I mean, the main.
They're probably scared that Obrador is going to flip. If Obrador wins their presidency, they're afraid of Mexico flipping. Well, really, all NATO, all Colombia is there for right now with they're signing with NATO. All of a sudden, it's because Venezuela actually wanted to get around the SWIFT system by going on the going to cryptocurrency. So you can't strangle them financially anymore. So if you can't persuade them, you can't control them with wealth. What's your next option?
Attack them.
Force. So basically, they have to have a reason. They have to have a reason to go into Venezuela. They have to have. Colombia doesn't have a reason to attack Venezuela, does it?
Well, if you watch the interview, he talks about Colombia actually sabotaging a lot of the processes inside Venezuela.
Mm-hmm.
Duro talks about that.
Yeah.
So I think.
Yeah. What I'm saying, but he doesn't. But they do not have a reason to go into Venezuela with military force, do they?
They actually wouldn't need to if they're a NATO partner.
Yes, they would. Even a NATO partner.
No,
even a NATO partner needs a reason to attack a sovereign nation. You just can't willy-nilly walk into a country and start a war with a country willy-nilly. Even a NATO partner.
Well, if a NATO partner is attacked, then that requires that all other NATO partners join in.
So is Venezuela attack? If Venezuela attacked Colombia, they wouldn't need to be part of NATO to actually have a counterattack, would they?
Excuse me?
If Venezuela attacked Colombia, would Colombia need to attack? Would Colombia need a reason to actually have a counterattack, have a war with Venezuela?
No, they wouldn't need one, but that would invite the United States and other NATO partners to come in.
Mm-hmm. So in other words, there is no reason for Colombia to attack Venezuela yet until they invent one.
As an independent body, no.
And in other words, they're getting ready to try to do a Syria or a Libya inside Venezuela.
Right.
And then have all. So in other words, what they're gonna have is a quasi NATO. You're gonna start a independent counterinsurgency inside Venezuela, and the NATO is going to take the side of the rebels, as they call them, right? And then they would have so in other words, since Colombia is there, Colombia's going to come in and say, "Oh, we're going to take the side of the rebels because we have rebels we're taking the side of the rebels in Colombia, and because they're part of NATO, then all the European factions can actually come in and have a no-fly zone."
Right. It'll be the Independent Party, which is who was the opposition to the Bolivarian Party.
So you're getting ready. In other words, well, basically now America after 15 years or damn near 20 years now has to protect its backyard, which it should have done 20
Right.
years ago. So now that they're unwinding their adventures in the Middle East and they haven't tended their backyard, now they have to come back and mow the lawn. So this is probably just the first step. That's what
Venezuela and Russia signed. Venezuela and Russia signed agreements, I believe it was a year or so ago, for military cooperation with Russia gave military permission to Venezuela to have permission to their airspace in Russia, and Venezuela has given permission to the Russians to actually use Venezuelan airspace as well as produce tanks inside Venezuela.
This is going to get
your T-90 battle tanks.
This is going to get messy. This is going to get messy. This is going to get real messy, which is something I figured was going to happen. This is going to get real. What I told you when didn't I tell you guys when he announced this Petro and he was trying to get around the SWIFT system, this shit was getting ready to jump off. This is just in other words, basically this is you have to have political cover to actually do this. You just can't walk in and do this. So you have to have political cover. United States and Europe just can't have a no-fly zone and attack Venezuela. It's not going to happen. It wouldn't be feasible after all the crap that's going on in the Middle East. You just can't do it. Maybe 20 years ago, possibly, probably could have got away with it. But now after 20 years of seeing this crap, it's going to be hard to get away with it. So they need cover. But they're going to actually use the same. I wouldn't be surprised if we have friends of Venezuela in about 6 months.
What's that? They already have it.
They have friends of Venezuela already?
Yeah.
What's that?
In other words, you had friends of Libya.
If you watch the Maduro interview, it's another interview that I didn't post. He talks about a lot of the policies of the opposition is coming straight out of SOCOM, which is U.S. Southern Command.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, do they? Okay, you've heard of the 50 what 20 or 30 member states that had they were called the Friends of Libya, right? And once Libya, they killed Gaddafi and Libya was a train wreck. They moved to that same group moved to what, Friends of Syria, right? Almost the same member states, right?
Okay.
Did this same group now move to Venezuela? Say Friends of Venezuela.
Yeah, for the most part. And there's another investigation by Telesur, by Abby Martin. She went into Venezuela to actually do the investigation, and she has it on YouTube. It's a pretty good interview. An investigation. But basically, Russia is almost complete with the new SPF system, which is a counterweight to the SWIFT system, because they're practically pushed off the SWIFT system as we speak, because of the sanctions.
Well, China already has one. The thing is, how far has it gone?
Boy, this is
something happened to BGS.
I'm here. Can you hear me? Can't you hear me?
But Mike,
you're breaking up.
Yeah,
I'm breaking up. Okay,
yeah, I can hear you. Okay.
All right, I'm not surprised.
Yeah,
they're everywhere.
This is
I just wanted to bring up one more point to the panel, that China bought Uruguay last year for $50 billion.
The whole country
basically paid off 90% of their debt, and they put a military base inside Uruguay. So Uruguay is now just basically a puppet of the Chinese government now. So there's a military base in there.
Oh boy.
Because Belt and Road. What would you do if you were China and you were taking over the planet? What would you do?
Same thing.
You got to start strategically setting up your pieces.
Yeah. No. Yeah. They don't have it yet. Friends of Venezuela, they haven't done it yet. I don't see it.
Well, it's not officially a Friends of Venezuela, but there has been opposition flying from DC and back into Venezuela, and Maduro talks about how they're trying to undermine the whole entire country. What were you going to say, Lano?
No, I was saying no. This is setting up to be something, because I remember I know when Venezuela said they're gonna do the crypto, and I automatically saw, almost like within days, I automatically saw something that the United States banned American citizens from investing in the Venezuelan petro. And no, I heard UPGS say, well, they're trying to get around the American dollar. Obviously,
Hmm.
America not going to like that.
Hmm.
Then I see NATO is talking with Colombia. I think we pointed on this think 2 weeks ago. So
Hmm.
they're going to use Colombia as a quote unquote proxy
Hmm.
to destabilize Venezuela even more, or if
Hmm.
not take over Venezuela.
Hmm. They have to, because it's too strategic for them. They've been basically trying to do this for darn near 20 years, and basically since they've been in this financial pinch, um, what basically caused by the right wing, the right wing, the elite basically emancipating or taking money out of the country, and basically trying to break the Venezuelan financial system. I figured
Capital
if capital flight, if they couldn't get rid of Maduro by doing that, and by basically destroying the financial system, then that would Maduro actually winning probably was their last shot. So now it's about force, and we're going to see how far they see if the American people ride with this. It's going to be a
I
mess.
saw I saw videos of China basically shipping all types of military hardware, new military hardware into Venezuela the
Yeah,
last 6 months or so. So
Oh
yeah,
there's
boy.
long trains of
yeah,
APCs,
yeah.
IFVs,
Yeah.
main battle tanks
Oh,
going
yeah, oh, no, no. It's
into
getting ready to get
Venezuela.
it's getting ready to get real, because the United States might have been playing with Syria, but they're not going to be playing with Venezuela. So this might get real quick. So we'll see. We'll see how what an appetite for this the United States has, or the United States Congress has, because it's going to get
Hmm.
messy.
I,
If it gets messy in
yeah,
Venezuela, then it's going to spread. It's going to get real messy and real quick, because now
right.
it's in our
I know.
backyard. Go ahead. Mm.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I know. Maduro has been having long talks with Bashar al-Assad
Hmm.
about helping him out in Syria as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but basically, this is a. I mean, you can all basically you don't even have to. It's not really complex. There's only so many so many pieces left on the board. I mean, you can be blindfolded. And you pick up a headline, and say, "Oh yeah, this makes sense."
You said it's not really complex, or
And it's
do you
not.
mean
Sorry.
Ulysses?
Well, complex. Ulysses is a complex person. Well, yeah, probably too. What I'm saying is, this is this is not really complicated as far as reading the tea leaves on this. This is pretty. There's pretty much.
Straightforward.
Straightforward, because there's not many pieces left on the board. There's
Now,
only
question: when you say spread, it can spread. You mean to neighboring countries in
yeah.
South America?
Well, because you start attacking Venezuela, and when Colombia starts attacking Venezuela, you're going to get refugees, okay, and then you can get if especially if China and Russia kind of join in, then we got to remember, where is Brazil?
Brazil is right there, and
Brazil is right beneath.
And Brazil is right there, and guess who's Brazil's aligned with?
China.
China. So this it has a possibility of spreading very quickly. And we ain't even talking about what's going on with Mexico, because Mexico may turn socialist, if Obrador actually wins the presidency. And Mexico is not too fond of Trump and
Yeah.
America right now. So this could get
They
messy
actually just
very quickly.
Mexico is just invited to the BRICS, the
Hmm.
BRICS summit in Africa.
It's gonna get messy.
It's getting
So
real.
let's get real. I mean, yes, but basically this is the end game. I've been telling you guys, this is the end game. Okay, this is not this didn't just start. This is an end game. I've been waiting for this for 20 years. So this is like been a 20-year process for me. It's like a slow moving thing. Okay, step by step by step by step, and basically 2017, when you have Xi's speech the same day that Trump gets inaugurated. They said, okay, they did that on purpose, because normally they hold the World Economic Forum. It had been for years. They've been in February, but they moved up to January on the day that Trump is inaugurated, and Xi gives the speech. Why did they do that? The pimp is announcing the game.
Now, I got a question for you. What's the just okay? Uruguay. Why Uruguay? It's far down.
Because they're
It's
cheap.
it's a cheap place to go, but it's also a good naval port for China to dock their aircraft carrier.
Yeah, it's cheap. In other words, you can buy them.
Okay.
Argentina would be better.
They also bought Jamaica too, because Jamaica had
Oh,
was
wow.
something like $22 billion in debt a couple of years ago, and they bought Jamaica's debt. So now, I mean, there's all types of infrastructure development inside.
And basically, if you look at the headlines lately, how many times has Merkel been to China in the last couple of years?
A couple.
11.
And Merkel is the finance minister of Germany, right?
No, she is the prime minister. Chancellor of Germany.
Okay, Germany.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm learning.
Yeah, so she's actually called a chancellor, not a prime minister, though.
Yeah, chancellor. Yeah.
But yeah, now you've seen not Francis, but Macron from France going into back and forth to China as well, trying to work out what they can do with Africa, because France capitalism is under attack at this point.
They're on their ass because the African countries don't have to take their deal anymore.
And Italy flipped, just last week. So if Italy flips, and then Portugal and Greece flip, later on next year, then France may have to bail out.
Well, France. Well, basically, Brexit should. I remember I told you guys Brexit should have been a heads up.
Yeah.
Should have been a heads up. Why did basically UK, part of the three-legged stool, actually hit the eject button and jump out, and at the behest of the Queen? Why? And basically they've been planning. If you look back at with the I might have to post this, but if you look back at the head of the common market, the head of governors of the common market, they've been planning this since 2010. They didn't just start. They've been planning this shit since 2010, when they probably knew that the ship could probably go left. And if the Libya thing didn't work out, Libya was actually the last ditch effort to save France and save the EU. And once that couldn't be done, basically the next step was for the UK to get out. And now the UK is getting out. Well, they're out really, and now but they need a landing spot, which they've already started to form with the try to bring back the common market.
Now,
but the Commonwealth.
I saw on Stratford that they have a YouTube video, YouTube channel that instantly has a anti-EU.
Yeah, they've been. In fact, I'll actually play, if I can find it. I will actually play it, because Jack Rasmus talked about that. Almost a year ago. If I can find it, I'll actually play it. He actually talked about about Italy and France and their basically populist or anti-EU sentiment that's going on.
Now, my question is this: okay, I know Jamaica is a Commonwealth of UK, but China,
no, there was a Commonwealth. It was a Commonwealth. They're no longer a Commonwealth.
Okay. And there was a Commonwealth, but the Queen is trying to rekindle the group of Commonwealth. How will that play out if she goes to Jamaica, talk to Jamaica about
about China?
Yeah, with China.
What does that mean? That means the UK has flipped already, or at least middling. Look who's been visiting the Putin in Russia, called Israel. Netanyahu's been in Israel 2 or 3 times, right? I mean, Netanyahu's been in Russia 2 or 3 times. Why is that?
Wait, Netanyahu, what?
Netanyahu of Israel has been in
Russia.
Visited Putin about 2 or 3 times already in the last couple of months.
To get rid of the Iranians as well.
They're not get rid of the Iranians.
They pushed the Iranians out. The Iranians are out now.
Basically, it's a wink, nod. Okay.
What?
In other words, if the Russians didn't want the Iranians out, the Iranians wouldn't be out.
That was breaking news this morning, that the Iranians and the Russians are at odds with each other. Because,
I know. Mike, do the math.
Mm-hmm.
Do the math.
Mm-hmm.
Did the Iranians get out before Netanyahu went to Russia, or after?
After.
after that. So that means, so why would you, if you had the might to push the Iranians out, why would you have to go to Putin and talk to him?
Because Putin got the power.
Because you're cutting a deal. We don't know what the deal is, but there's a deal being that has been cut. Now we have to wait to see like I always say, we don't have enough breadcrumbs to actually see what's going on. We have to basically wait till the breadcrumbs start to land to see what deal was cut. There was a deal cut. Now what it is, we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
You have to wait and see.
Well, in order for Israel to stop bombing Syria, the Iranians would have to leave. The Iranians have now gone as of last week. Tehran. Now the nuclear agreement has been breached by the United States, so they're right back to nuclear development, which is something that they've been waiting to do for quite some time, since 2015. But some of the stuff that they've been wanting to develop that would have taken 5 years is going to take 6 weeks, according to the ministry in Tehran. So it sounds like since the United States have pulled out, then they're taking countermeasures as we speak. And it's and according to the Iranian ministry, that they said a conflict with Israel at this point is not beneficial to them. There's no incentive to actually fight in Syria, over Israel.
Syria was basically the basically Iranians were in Syria basically as support to the Russians, actually helped clean up some of those rebel factions. That's all they were there for. They weren't there to actually be in Syria. They're actually there as support. So if they're not helpful to be in the support of the cleaning up of Syria, they couldn't go to the Iranians. Netanyahu couldn't go to the Iranians and force them out by force. He had to go up to Putin and say, look, okay, I know what you're trying to do, and this is what we want. And then don't you think Putin's going to get something in return?
Yeah. So
the thing is, what did and Netanyahu couldn't do this and say we're working with the Russians to get the Syrians out. He actually had the Iranians out. He has to save face. So,
I'd be interested.
Well, I would too. The thing is,
I'd be interested in knowing what the discussions were between.
I would too. The thing is,
between Israel and Iran and Jordan, because that happened the other day. So some kind of secret meeting that was held.
In other words, there's a deal cut. He went to Putin because basically you're getting too close to starting a freaking war, and Israel is basically a one nuke nation. Okay, and you have two submarines. You have one submarine that could take out Israel by itself. Go ahead.
When you say get the Iranians out, you mean out of Syria?
Out of Syria, yeah.
Okay. There are Iranian bases inside Syria, outside of Damascus, and the goal was to put a naval port inside Syria, right next to the Russians' naval port in Tartus.
So in other words, you can't force them out. So you basically you can't cut a deal with the Iranians. Who you cut the deal with?
Putin.
With Putin or China. Well, you probably cut it with China too. But the thing is, you can't actually come out in public and do it. But the thing is, you had to do it out in public with Putin. After 2 or 3 times going to Putin, I think the last meeting he had with Putin was like a couple days ago, 2-3 days ago. If I'm not mistaken, because I don't really track it I really don't have time to track it as much as I probably should. But the thing is, I'm not surprised. I said, I said they're cutting the deal as soon as I saw him going to Putin. I said, okay, they're getting ready to cut a deal. And after a couple of times, they cut a deal. So we should start seeing something going on in response to if the Iranians and Jordan and Israel are all coming together to have talks, that's part of the deal. At the end of the day, if the United States has to protect its backyard, and they don't have enough money to keep this stuff up, Israel's going to be out there on its ass without no cover. So they're going to need to start cutting deals. They're going to need to start cutting deals because Egypt's already flipped. Syria's on one side. You facing the Iranians, you're facing Iran's facing the Russians. You're probably going to face the Chinese and the Egyptians, and you are surrounded and with no help. You're gonna have to cut a deal,
as well as Libya,
and Turkey, because Turkey's already flipped.
right? Egypt and Russia have a military cooperation agreement now. For Egyptians can use Russian airspace for military purposes, as well as Egypt has given permission to Russia to use their naval ports as well as the military airspace.
It's going to get real interesting in the next. I told you 2018 was going to be revealing because a lot of the moves are like at the end of the chess game. Every move means something. So and they're not hidden because you can't wait because every move is immediate. So all this stuff is immediate. So basically, you can almost look at a headline and see a move and say, okay, something's getting ready. There's the deal getting ready to be cut, or they're getting ready to take an action.
So we got real interesting going on in the Middle East, and it's about to get real ugly.
All over the planet. All over the planet. What I'm saying is, every time you see, like, once, like, remember I told you when I think it was the Winter Olympics in North Korea. President was down there visiting with China and South Korea during the Olympics. I told you they're getting ready to sign an agreement. They're getting ready to have some talks,
which will unify both
Koreas. Because North Korea is tired of being on its ass as far as economically. It doesn't make any sense. So China doesn't need them to be a dog on the chain anymore. So basically, their role as a dog on a chain or as a counterweight doesn't make sense anymore. So now it's time to bury the hatchet and give South Korea some security, and then by the same token, China and South Korea give North Korea some economic aid and some development, which is what they want. So it only makes sense because the need for doing this doesn't exist anymore. So there's a lot of stuff that's going to change. So it's going to change fairly rapidly. Now, the only thing we have to worry about is whether somebody's going to do something stupid to actually break this momentum. Because if they break the momentum, then we're going to have real issues because the whole system might break. So it's not just a war or nuclear war. It's also a economic meltdown of the whole system, which is bad for everybody. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. There's going to be some deals cut, and there's going to be some moves made. So a lot of this stuff, if you sit back and look at it like a world leader and look at it like a chessboard, and not say what they do, they'll say, why are they doing this? Because they haven't done this before. And you sit back and ask and actually sit in both chairs. Okay, when two leaders meet, one wants something and one wants something in return. The thing is, okay, if Netanyahu's going to Putin, to Russia, to Putin, and have a face-to-face talk, he's not just going there to say hi. He's going there to ask for something, or actually, we can't demand anything because they don't have enough power, but ask for something. And then Putin's going to ask for something in return. If you put yourself in both chairs, you say, well, what I asked for, as Netanyahu, and as Putin, well, what I asked for. And then either you're right or you're wrong. And then you can actually see, okay, I thought he would ask for this, but he didn't. This is what happened. So he must have asked for what? And then you trace it backwards. Yeah.
Well, my understanding is that Trump and Putin have already talked about Syria. So the deal was, if the Iranians leave, then the Americans will leave.
Mm-hmm.
So if the Iranians leave now, then the Americans will probably leave after the Iranians close down their bases. The Iranians only had 2 bases anyways. Mm-hmm. So the Americans have 10 military bases. And the main military base that they have is what's blocking that superhighway from Lebanon through Syria and through Iraq back to Tehran,
which
is a part of the whole entire One Belt, One Road project.
So if the Americans need an out, basically Israel just gave it to them.
By visiting Russia.
Or even by possibly attacking the Iranians in the first place. So in other words, we don't know what the deal is, but the thing is, as the deal unwinds, we'll find out. As it unravels, this is the time to actually keep an eye on stuff, because as they have to basically fulfill the elements of the deal, you actually see the stuff start to come together.
Okay.
So this is the time that you actually watch after they visit and after they speak. And then You will see what they. It's just like a coach during a timeout, right? You see the players go to the coach during a timeout,
Yeah.
and you know they set up a play.
Mm-hmm.
And when they break from timeout, after talking, then you see how they line up. He said,
Okay.
okay, what did the coach ask for and what did he want? So you see what play they ran. I said, okay, this is what he wanted when he talked to him during the time. It's basically the same thing. So this is time that as analysts, because we're not privy to the inside knowledge, right? Because
Right.
we don't have inside context or nothing like that. We have to wait for the play to play out. That's what we have to do. And then we can actually go back and analyze, okay, this must have been what they asked for. This must have been what they did. And if you do that enough, by just like in sports, like if you watch basketball or football, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you watch it enough, if you watch it enough, you can almost anticipate what that coach is going to do, right? What
Yeah.
play they're going to run by what they need. Like say if it's the last second and they got and they're like on the 20-yard line, the 25-yard line, and you got 6 seconds. What can they run? They have two Hail Mary passes. It's the only play they have, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's not a mystery. So the thing is the same thing that applies for being an analyst as far as that's what I'm trying to teach you guys. Okay, it's the same thing. Same thing. You watch it as a fan because all you are is a fan. But the thing is, geopolitics is the same thing as watching sports. You
Okay.
see the timeout call. You see who meets. You see what they talk. You don't even know what they talked about. They're going to announce something, but it's going to be bullshit, right?
Right.
There's going to be some kind of bullshit, this, that, or the other, right?
But what they do is something different.
Well, what play did they run after they talk? And you might not understand it at the time, but over time, what are you going to do?
Understand it.
You're going to understand because they're going to repeat the same play.
Okay. Okay.
You know, see what I'm talking about? I'm not. In other words, like Cerulean says, I'm not telling you what to think.
How to think.
I'm trying to teach you how to think. So when you actually, because you're going to come up with a different conclusion than I will, and Mike's going to come up with a different conclusion than me or you, right? But the thing is, if you look at the same play, same timeout, same meeting, and we sit back and watch the play, you see how it plays out, then you learn, okay, I fucked up there because I didn't think they would do that. So why would they run this play instead of that play? And you go back and analyze it. So when you see that play run again, see the same situation again, are they getting ready to run this play? Like Venezuela. Okay, they're getting ready to run this play because they've ran it twice already. They've already run the play twice with Libya and Syria. So it's the same play. So you can actually see them. I said, oh, okay, they're getting in. Okay, Colombia has been joined NATO. Why would Colombia be the first? Colombia out of all the states in Latin America, all the states, they're the first one to actually join NATO.
Because they're right next to Venezuela.
Because they're right next to Venezuela.
Yeah.
And who does
Venezuela, but not just Venezuela, but Colombia as well. I mean, Brazil as well. And Ecuador.
Well, who does the United States have a problem with?
Venezuela.
Now, did they sign? They actually allow Colombia to join NATO before Venezuela went on the Petro or not? After. Why now?
Can I ask a question, gentlemen?
You sure can.
What's up, Dr.
Hello, fellas. What amount of oil does China get from Africa and Venezuela, if any?
Very little from they get very little from Nigeria, and they get very little from Venezuela. Venezuela is basically sells this oil when it's actually running right to Europe and United States. Most of Venezuela's oil used to go to United States.
Now, but China gets a lot of oil from the United States, right?
They get most of their oil from the Middle East.
China gets a lot of oil from Angola as well. Angola have a specific port set up just with Angola as well as Ghana.
Yeah. Now, if China positions itself to again, the geopolitics, that's not my wheelhouse. I'm a chart reader. I'm a dumb chart reader, okay? But from what I see on the charts, this kind of falls in line because my view is that the dollar has not topped.
Mhm.
But all this I'm saying is really doesn't mean anything on the calendar, the timeline for countries. Okay, countries can move their chess pieces a year before.
Mhm. Okay.
Say oil hits its bottom, and
Mhm.
because I believe oil is going to go significantly lower, but the scariness starts after that, because
Mhm.
when oil hits its bottom,
Mhm.
we have the next Fibonacci level above that $147 high that
Mhm.
it reaches 238.
Mhm.
Okay, so could it be that China is positioning to be able to protect itself
No.
from that price
No. No. No.
spiking?
No. Not with Venezuela. Okay. Basically, your basically your oil security, your energy security depends on Venezuela, and has been so for the last 30 years that I've been tracked, that I've been able to go back and find out.
No, I'm
Okay.
saying from China's perspective. If
No,
China,
what China does not have anything to do with this particular move. Now, the thing is, what China's attempting to do is the same thing that the United States attempted to do with Iran, which is take that piece off the board if it can and control it. Because if I control that, I control you. It has nothing to do with money this time. It's geopolitical control. This is a game of risk that's being played, and China's perfectly willing for Venezuela to keep supplying oil with the United States and have a good relationship with the United States. They don't care about that. They have no reason to actually collapse the United States or threaten them. Doesn't make
so what does China want?
China doesn't want anything in this. This is the United States doing this. They can't afford to risk Venezuela getting out of their control. Basically, this was all. Remember, I told you back in when they announced the petrol, this is going to be an issue. This is going to be an issue because they can't control Venezuela with persuasion because the right wing doesn't have any control, and they can't control them with money anymore. If they get off the SWIFT system, what's their last means of control?
Force.
Force. That's all this is. It's nothing. This is not rocket science. You don't have to read a chart. You could read this. You could Stevie Wonder could read this.
Hmm.
Like I said, this is nothing but a slow curveball right down the middle. You can read it with Braille. But basically, I mean, I couldn't call exactly what play they were going to call. But the thing is, I knew that force was coming, or at least going to be threatened. As soon as he announced the petrol, I said, this is going to be an issue.
So
And
NATO talking to Colombia is the play.
Well, the thing is, they need a friendly country that's right next door.
Okay.
And they're going to use Venezuela's refugees coming over the border as an excuse.
and that's exactly what's happening right now. That there's not enough surplus, for Venezuelans to actually live off of. So they said people are starting to eat out of garbage cans and whatnot. But I think that's a little far fetched because people are buying up the stuff that's on the store shelves, and they're taking it into Colombia and selling it for U.S. dollars in order to get around capital flight because they need to get rid of those Venezuelan dollars. But if they can go forward with the petro, then that would alleviate the whole entire paper, fiat currency system that they've been tied to.
But basically, you'll be seeing de-dollarization all over the world. We saw I just put up. Remember, I put up the video axis of gold that I had that argument with, and people didn't understand what it was. They thought it was it's just de-dollarization. And basically, all gold is that basically an insurance policy. So in other words, if we don't have anything else that works, we can always use gold because we're actually going to bypass the Swiss system at all costs. So basically, there's only so many ways to do that in this current arrangement that we have as far as a global trade system. There's only a few ways to actually do it. There's not that many ways, and until you have an alternative trusted system, because that's all it is, a trusted system that's built, that's actually functioning, you're going to have a backstop. Gold is your backstop for everything because it is the base, the what is called the base operating system that the trade actually is actually built on.
Okay.
If that makes sense to you guys. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't surprise me that Maduro has been flying back and forth to Russia, to Moscow to see Putin,
Mhm.
in order to speed up the process of getting this SPF system up, which is the new system used to get off the SWIFT system.
Yeah. Yeah. Basically, they've been strangling. They've been strangling Venezuela with the SWIFT system for God, the good grief since Chavez. They've been strangling them with the
Yes,
SWIFT
Chavez
system.
came in '03.
Yeah, in '03. So they've been strangling them since then. So they've been dealing with this for 15 years, and it's just they've been tightening the reins. Um, since the United States started the fracking, and they're not as dependent on Venezuelan oil, they can actually afford to actually strangle them more. But when that is either too expensive or it actually falls off, then that's when they're going to have an issue because Venezuela, if you count the problem with Venezuelan oil is that it's almost like tar, right? You have to have a special refinery actually use it, right? But they have 5 times the amount of crude than probably anybody on the planet. But it's not in the most usable form. Like say Saudi Arabia is sweet and light for the most part, and when Venezuela has tons and tons of crude, right? But it's basically in a less usable form.
Mhm.
But the thing is, as you have technological advancement, it'll be more available. So it's basically, as far as the United States is concerned, it's basically the jewel of Latin America for them.
Okay.
Hello?
Hey,
Yeah.
we got you.
Dollar Will. I think you talking to somebody else.
Oh, okay. What I'm saying is I haven't looked at this in such a long time because last time I looked at this was it? I would say 2013. I haven't looked at this in a long time, so I'm not as up to speed as I used to be. But a lot of this stuff is like old hat. It's just okay. They're still doing this. It's, in other words, I look at a headline. Okay, they're still doing this because the plays really haven't changed. It's just gotten worse. But I think it's actually come to a head. If the Russians and the Chinese are in there, or actually really in there deep, then it's coming to a head because they can't. Maduro was the Maduro election was actually their last chance. If they ruin the economy and can't get Maduro out, then they probably can't. Then they probably need to do something else because time's running out for the United States as far as this is concerned. Because de-dollarization is a real thing. Yeah, go ahead.
And they feel the walls caving in on them, especially with the new Cuban president that was just elected.
Mm-hmm.
Maduro and that new Cuban president has been talking back and forth at least twice in the last week and a half.
Yeah. If the EU goes boom, then United States is in deep shit because they don't have a leg to stand on. They won't have partners for cover. Then it's just naked aggression. And will the United States actually stand for another war? And refugees and the other stuff that's actually gonna that it's gonna affect.
And the trade war isn't helping them either.
The trade war is something that basically Trump and his team talked about. Good God, even before he got elected. So him being isolationist is not really surprising. Because they're going to basically they only have so many tools to defend the dollar with, and if you're running deficits, and if you're running deficits all over the world that the dollar is, and once you use seigniorage and you can't run deficit anymore, and all those dollars have the potential to come flying back at you, and you're not prepared for it because you're deeply in debt. That's not a scenario that you would like. It would have been better for the United States to actually decline slowly, which is what I was hoping, and kind of unstack all of its debt before it actually happened and stabilize. But United States is a lot of hubris. They decided they really wanted the new American century. They thought they could pull it off, and evidently, so far they haven't. Maybe they will. Who knows? But it's going to take a Hail Mary.
Yeah.
Well, if you had any intentions on running to Guatemala, I think you might want to cancel those that itinerary.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't want to run to Guatemala. Not for that. Not for that. I mean, why Guatemala? What's Guatemala doing other than the volcano?
That's a big explosion.
Well, you wouldn't have.
So what? There's more. There's a whole lot of American dollars down in Guatemala. I doubt it's gonna anything's gonna happen in Guatemala anytime soon, unless there's rebels that actually have a reason to kick up dust, and they really don't right now. They're very happy down there.
Well, in this last article we got this from RT. This is from May 31st.
Mm-hmm.
We were close to direct conflict between Russia and U.S. inside Syria. Bashar
Mm-hmm.
Assad.
Mm-hmm.
Syrian President Bashar Assad says Moscow deterred the West from launching a devastating countrywide airstrike
Mm-hmm.
last month and believes that Damascus has nearly won a 7-year war despite continued U.S. interference.
Mm-hmm.
With every move forward for the Syrian army and for the political process and for the whole situation, our enemies and our opponents, mainly the West led by the United States and their puppets in Europe and
Mm-hmm.
in our region, they try to make it farther, either by supporting more terrorism, bringing more terrorists to Syria, or by
Mm-hmm.
hindering the political process.
Mm-hmm.
I told RT correspondent Murad Gazdiev during a sit down during Damascus, noting that without outside funding, its opponents inside the country could be subdued within a year.
Mm-hmm.
After having to switch its support between the various anti-Assad factions and the recapture of the key cities of Aleppo and Deir ez-Zor by government forces over the past 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
Washington, the Syrian leader believes, is losing its cards and can be brought to the negotiating table. Our
Mm-hmm.
ch- our challenge is how can we close this gap between their plans and our plans? Assad said. World didn't buy U.S. chemical weapons story. The Syrian leader believes, however, that the closer the deadly conflict comes to an end, the more desperate his opponent's measures become. He alleged Duoma chemical weapon attack. It is in our interest. Why and why now? He asks, as a last-ditch Western attempt to sway international opinion, one that one that failed. They
Mm-hmm.
told a story, they told a lie, and the public opinion around the world and in the West didn't buy their story, but they didn't withdraw. So they had to do something even on a smaller scale. Assad said, referring to the joint airstrikes against reported Syrian chemical weapons facilities carried out April 14th by the US, UK, and France.
Mm-hmm.
Assad says Moscow plays also played a role in restraining Washington's influence and meddling in the region, both generally since its invitation to aid Damascus in September 2015 and in this particular incident. Yeah, this man, it's a longer article, but he really puts it out on the table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, basically, if you've been listening to me for the last couple of years, this shouldn't be a shock. It shouldn't be a shock. If you guys have been listening to me for the last 2 years, it shouldn't be a shock at all. It's like, okay, yeah. It's about time. Turkey was the big piece that accelerated all this. Turkey was a huge piece. It was a huge mistake in the Syrian war. There was actually two. One was the Ukraine, and the other one was Turkey. Those two things right there were two huge mistakes because you just caused Turkey to flip because they can't trust you anymore. Once they flip, go ahead.
Because of the coup, you said America tried to start.
Erdogan, yeah. You can go back and look at it. You can actually go back and read the coup and who Erdogan demanded that to actually the United States actually extradite, that they haven't. The guy that actually helped them actually develop the coup inside. So, I mean, it's pretty much straightforward. NATO wanting to take its missiles out and all that kind of stuff. So that tells you that they actually inspired that coup. So Erdogan actually flipped. They've been doing business with the Russians ever since. This has been a long time coming. It's like it's probably why I stopped doing it, because I actually got tired of actually doing this stuff over, for 10, 11 years. It's like, okay, I had enough. So, I mean, I could go back and get up to speed, but basically, this is like leaving at halftime and coming back in the fourth quarter. Okay, what's going on? What's the score? Okay. Yeah, I'm basically get caught up. Say, okay, I know what's happening. This has been a long time coming. Actually, when the Syrian war actually first started, I said Syrian war is actually a mistake by the United States. Actually, go do to Syria what happened to Libya, because Syria is right in the middle of everything. And if you do that, you're going to have refugees in Europe. You're going to have destabilization of a lot of the member states around the Mediterranean and blah, blah, blah. You probably will get the Russians involved in what you did. And basically, by causing a Syrian war, you made a wreck out of the EU, what was left of it. So now the EU's all in pieces, and now there's so many refugees that actually come across from Libya and because of Libya and Syria. Now, like I said, with I think I'd actually, well, that too. But I'm saying is Soros actually said that what you need to do is, instead of accepting all these refugees and all this other crap, and trying to hold down these places from developing like you have been for the last 50 years, do the reverse. Go ahead and use what money you have while you still have it, and actually start developing Africa and all those other places, so that all these immigrants will actually flow back and actually stabilize. So you actually stabilize what's left of Europe and accept your decline gracefully, basically, is what he's saying.
Okay.
Because he's saying basically EU is basically finished. Okay, so use what little leverage you have left, what power you have left, to actually put yourself in a better position. And he's saying because I wish I could get the whole speech though. I mean, the whole everything that he said, because they give you the speech that's prepared, and then the stuff that they say after, which is more interesting. So I've been looking for. I haven't found. I wish I could actually hear his live speech and actually see what he actually said, and then the questions that he took. But for whatever reason, they're not going to let that one out, at least not right now, because I'm sure he said a hell of a lot more than the prepared speech.
It's getting good, gentlemen.
I
said it's getting good.
Yes, it was the end game. The thing is, because where are we, and what's going to be our fallout? Because we're still here.
You talking about Black
in the United States? Yeah, we have Black Americans. We're gonna get the fallout. We're already getting the fallout. What I'm saying is, if the United States lose seniorage, how's that gonna play out in America?
Well, Lionel, that's something that you and I have talked about in the past when we first started doing these hangouts. Where are Black people going to sit, on the chessboard? If you had a piece, if you had a piece on the chessboard, where are you going to sit at? Are we going to organize? Are we going to start looking at the alternative currencies? Are we going to strategically start linking up with Africa? I mean, what is our game plan?
Like I think going from Blazing Saddles, and I said Mongo says
our game plan is to sling mud on YouTube.
Nah, that's not our game plan.
Well, I know it's not ours, but
who's slinging mud?
You know exactly what I'm talking about. But anyway,
we'll talk about that offline.
No. If you want to have this conversation, Ulysses, I'll open a hangout. We can have this conversation.
No, because we have a hangout after this one. I'm just being facetious.
Okay.
But yeah,
so can I finish? So I can finish.
No pun intended, huh?
Can I finish my point?
Slightly. Go ahead.
Can I finish my point then? Okay. Like they said in Blazing Saddles, Mongo said in Blazing Saddles about where the choo-choo goes. Mongo, nothing but pawn in the game. We're pawns in the game.
Right. I was thinking about that question when y'all was asking what are we going to do? Well, hell, I mean, given the time frame, it's not much we can do.
Nothing can do. If I said this because 2004, I knew that America was probably going to go downhill. Okay, eventually, by what was going on in the background with because I said there was one chance for America to actually stabilize itself, stabilize the situation, and actually right its ship and actually be able to decline gracefully. And I said they had to be out of Iraq and the Middle East by 2005, which should have been the plan, which is something that what's his name, the general was Colin Powell actually said, you need to be out of here. Do your ops real quick, stabilize the situation, get rid of Saddam Hussein, and get out. We can't afford a nation build here because it's going to become a quagmire, and it did. So 2005 rolled around, and they're still there because they want a nation build. They actually want to expand into Pakistan, and Barack Obama gets in, and they won't let. He wants to get the troops out and pull out and stabilize. And guess what? They wouldn't let him do it. So now here we're in 2018, and not only did we not get out of Iraq and Afghanistan and Pakistan, they actually went into Syria and actually made it even worse. So basically, Libya, they really were in Libya because the military wouldn't let him do it. Basically, what he did, all Barack Obama did, and he had to be asked by the Queen and asked by Macron, he had to be promised something, is to basically take out the air defense system so that Europe, the French and the British could actually come in and mop it up. So basically, what's going on in Libya has very little to do with the United States. I mean, very little to do with the United States.
That's what they talk about in the book in the first chapter, how America was overextended with its international.
You're talking about the gold dollars and power.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically, okay. They actually tell get to the end of the book and actually tell you what happened. Basically, all Nixon did was basically use NATO as a club. Okay, look, if you don't want to do business with us, we're actually gonna snatch NATO. We're gonna actually pull back and become isolationists, and then you guys actually not give up any gold. And you guys figure out about what you're gonna do with your international currency system. So in other words, if you think you can do better, then basically you did the pimp move. Okay. In other words, if you accept this deal, then you're my bitch. Because I'm not gonna give you no more gold for these dollars. I will actually run your currency system with the dollar, but you have to be my bitch. So basically, what Nixon did say, Nixon actually asked Michael Hudson, "Can we do this?" Michael Hudson, the book's called Global Imperialism, because he actually wrote the plan. Because they asked Michael Hudson, he was young in Commons, "Can we do what would happen if we went off the gold system?" And then Michael Hudson basically wrote a whole book about it. And basically, I said, and they figured out they can get away with it. So they actually said, basically Nixon said, "Fuck you. Now deal with it. What are you gonna do? You're gonna pull NATO and the rest of our military support around the world, and let you deal with the economic system." And the world blinked.
And the French wanted their gold back.
The French didn't. Okay, there's two things with NATO. Well, if the French wanted, French was trying to force the United States off the gold system. That's what they're trying to do. But the thing is, they were more afraid of what would happen if NATO left and the Russians and the Germans were there unchecked. What would happen to them? Because they were invaded 4 times. And they were decimated. France was decimated 4 times by the Russians and the Germans. So in other words, if the Germans have a bone to pick, and basically the Russians might have a bone to pick with Europe, and if NATO left, there would be no referee between the European countries. Eventually, they would have drifted back to another world war, and France did not want that anymore. So what they did what any country would do. Guess what? We'll accept the deal. That's how come NATO's not there for the Russians. NATO's there to keep the European powers stabilized. That's what they're there for. And if NATO left, the European powers would actually go back to doing what they always do for the last 400 years. That is the elephant in the room that nobody talks about. Gold dollars and power basically spells that all out, because the United States used NATO and the dollar as a club more than a few times. In fact, I was just rereading it again in the intro, where he actually touches on it. He didn't expand upon it. I probably know why he didn't. He expanded upon the Suez Crisis, where basically Eisenhower forced the British and the French out of Egypt, not by war, but by threatening to collapse their economic system and pull NATO. He used it as a club. This is not the first time that they've done it, but explain to you how this stuff actually operates. But anyway.
Well,
Let's say if the Democrats have any measures, I guess a decent measure of success at the midterm elections, does that hold out any kind of hope?
I don't. Well, Dollar Will, you know how when you do trades, man, you're an old trader. At some point, it doesn't. It doesn't matter what you do. If the sucker's going to go down, it doesn't matter what happens, right?
Right.
At some point, there's a point where that chart will turn, and or that chart will turn. It's going to turn. There's nothing you can do about it. It has to bottom out somewhere. Just hope it doesn't bottom out too far down.
Right.
Yeah. So basically, all the fundamentals and the technicals all line up and said it is what it is. And basically, United States. I mean, there's too many things: history, money, military mistakes. All this stuff lines up. And if the United States can actually get out of this shit, you know what? I'm gonna give up my black card. I'll become a white supremacist because you motherfuckers are too good. I can't. If they get out of this shit, they're too good for me to beat. I can't beat them. Might as well join them because they're too damn good.
Okay, one other question.
Mhm.
Let's say the dollar just hurries the hell up and makes this top and stresses the hell out of the euro and the franc.
It's
and
already
everything.
doing it. It's already doing it.
But it's gonna get worse because it's going higher. But let me get
Okay.
But the theory is faster the better. The faster the pain comes, it's gonna run the hell up to the top, shoot the interest rates up the hell, and then then the dollar, if the dollar, then resumes its customary downward spiral, would that take some of the pressure off to how would that because right now the trend is still up, but once the trend comes down,
if you do it too much, if you do too much and too fast, and you basically you play Django before, right? With the little sticks and stuff like that.
No.
Okay, if you ever play Django, if you pull a stick, you pull the wrong one, the whole thing comes tumbling down.
Okay.
If they pull the wrong stick, the whole system is going to come tumbling down. I know what they're doing it because they have to. At some point, they have to defend the dollar, right? That's what the interest rates are. Before it's to bring gold back into the country. And the other thing is to in a currency system like us, where floating exchange rates, trying to bring the balance of payments back down. It's typical. You have to do it. Basically, what's his name? Volcker did it back in the 70s and 80s. He did the same thing. It was an extreme. Volcker did it in extreme because he could afford to. Okay. Now the whole system is fragile. How much can you do, and how fast can you do it? Because if you do it too fast, the whole house of cards will come down.
Well, the scary thing is
nobody wants to see that shit because there's no place. If it happens, there's no place to run.
Well, it's set up to happen fast, okay? Because Exxon is still sitting on that damn trend line to fall to hell. Gold, if that gold triangle been running for 2.5 years, okay? And so when it's gonna happen fast.
The last time it happened fast, and they made a mistake defending the dollar was actually 1930. Right after the first stock market crash, they were trying to defend the dollar, and they tried to defend the dollar by raising interest rates and bringing gold back in the country. Guess what happened? You had a 10-year depression.
The name of the book is Super Imperialism.
Yeah, Super Imperialism by Michael Hudson. Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't read this shit in a long time, so I have to go back and reread this stuff because I read it, I got what I needed out of it, but I never thought I would have to teach it. So I never reread it. So like Gold, Dollars, and Power, now I've read it a couple times, but now I have to go back because I haven't read it in 8 years. So now I have to go back and actually reread this shit. And like I'm rereading it now, I'm actually doing a markup now on my next chapter.
This can be real ugly because even, look, you can look at even the markets. It's like I was on with a trading buddy, and we were talking about the S&P and what's holding that damn thing up. Because if you look at, I look at quarterly charts and stuff. It's like the volume is just falling off a cliff, but the price is still sitting up there.
Because the money has no place else to go.
You know, but
And
it's gonna
basically,
give up. It's gonna give up the ghost at some point. But
yeah,
the
what,
scary
what,
thing is what you said before is
mm,
how we can go 10 years. You know, we can be in a depression because once it gets to the bottom, it's gonna go sideways for a long time.
man, if okay, the thing is that now that the world is connected as much as it is, and there's no place to for resources to actually save you. If it cracks and basically the whole world is dependent upon this system, I hope for ugly. Ugly is the basically the best case scenario is ugly.
Right.
Is ugly. Okay, that's
Right.
the best
That's what
case
I'm
scenario.
rooting for. That's what
Yeah,
I'm.
you know, it's gonna be ugly. Ugly is the best case scenario. If it goes, to worst case scenario, I would say get your prayer robe out.
Yeah, and the chart setup is for ugly.
Yeah,
We have with like a dam sitting there for gold,
yeah,
and that's why I'm really rooting for the bottom to fall out for gold because gold is overbought right now severely. But we need a place for money to go, like you saying with the S&P. So gold has to hit the damn toilet so that people can have a place to go.
So and then when the United States raises interest rates, that puts pressure on everybody else on the dollar system. So now everybody's either looking to either bring dollars in or get the hell off the dollar. And a lot of these countries are tired of this merry-go-round. They're trying to get off the dollar. Now can they get off the dollar? Can they do it safely? And if they do get off the dollar, where does it leave us? Because we've been sucking blood from these people from this world a long time.
Right.
And what happens when we can't? And we have to actually pay full freight for everything. Because we've been basically like even in Gold Dollars and Power, we've been basically buying things from the rest of the world for IOUs.
Right.
What happens when we can't do that anymore?
We're gonna become third world.
And we have first world people.
We're gonna be
first
third
world
gangsters, okay? We're gonna
first world people that are not used to being third world.
Right. Only thing we're gonna be Sting Security Company. That's all we're gonna have is
the for those that are still alive. Let's put it that way.
Right.
It's gonna be. It's already ugly. Let's put it that way. As far as the American economy, it's already ugly.
Global gangsters. That's what we're gonna be.
Well, we'll see. Well, you know, I'm not looking forward to. I hope that I would never live long enough to actually see this shit. I was looking for a cushy retirement. You know, I said, give me 20 years to actually go someplace else and actually set up shop where I can actually kind of get off the grid a little bit. And so when it comes, I'm prepared for whatever's left. You know, maybe get the grandkids, get them raised and that kind of stuff in someplace else where it's safe. And then whatever happens, happens. But sadly, that may not happen. Hopefully they can figure some way out because what's happening is not too. The UBI is actually looking very, very nice right now.
Yeah.
Compared to what was something I've been saying. UBI when all the cars actually line up and all the chickens come home to roost, you're gonna be asking, oh, maybe UBI is not a bad idea after all. $200 trillion in debt. You can't pay that shit. You can't pay it.
You know, I gotta sing my song. If people out there listening, you keep your daggone eyes on gold, dollar, and oil, and start learning how to trade. You'll at least give yourself a fighting chance.
Yeah, you gotta learn how to trade. Yeah. If you can learn fast enough. Yeah.
You know, and some basics of how to read a chart. You don't have to become an expert. You know, just to be able to make a forecast to get in the right. Catch a trend, you know.
Well, all the traders can see this stuff lining up. They already said it lining up. Now, what the outcome is going to be, nobody knows. But the traders already seen this stuff lining up.
Right.
Yeah.
It's there.
It's there. So, and then the rest of the fundamentals is just more fuel.
Well, I actually have one more video.
Go ahead.
Of the Putin interview with the Austrian journalist or supposed journalist. I think he works for NATO, but he kept interrupting Putin, and Putin basically told him to shut the F up in the interview in Russian.
And what did he do?
Shut up.
He did shut up.
Okay. There's some things I don't like about Putin, but you know, he is who he is, and basically he has no He's direct. Let's put it that way. He's not up for any bullshit. Yeah.
Well, they
Any
kept trying
last,
to. They kept trying to say that he annexed Crimea from the Ukraine illegally, and basically Putin fired back like, well, what about Kosovo? What NATO did.
And then sometimes people forget that you're dealing with a world leader and an ex KGB that knows way more than you do.
Right, he's a lawyer by trade.
Who's that? Putin?
Yeah.
I thought Putin was an engineer.
No, he's a lawyer. He's actually he actually studied law.
Okay, I thought he was an engineer. Okay, he could have studied law, but I'm saying I thought he graduated in engineering. Anyway.
Well, any last comments?
No. I mean, I talked enough. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm reading the articles and I'm learning.
I think we better pray. We better pick every God we've ever known.
Yeah, well, keep an eye on Colombia. That's what I would say. Keep an eye on Colombia. Keep an eye on Israel and Netanyahu, because that's fishy, real fishy. And also keep an eye on, like I said, keep an eye on Saudi Arabia, because they're trying to consolidate by Yemen and Jordan and Qatar. They're trying to consolidate. So there's a reason they're consolidating.
That's right. There's actually a riot. There was riots in Jordan all last week until they got rid of their prime minister.
I always wondered we always wondered, because we didn't actually know how the plate would break if Pax Americana actually ended. I guess we're getting our answer. But we asked that about maybe 10, 11 years ago. 2006. That's 12 years. Yeah. What would happen if Pax Americana ended, and how things would shake out? I guess we're getting our answer.
Yeah, Jordan's in so much debt right now they can't even get out. They're similar to like the European states, like Greece and Portugal.
Everybody's in debt. There ain't nobody. There is nobody in the black. Not even Germany. Everybody's in debt.
Yeah, they're $20 billion in debt.
Yeah, which for a small state, easy money, and you want to keep your people comfortable, so they actually vote for you and not get upset. So keeping up with the Joneses. What we're gonna see. And keep an eye on Italy too. So
yeah.
See if they're the next one to exit.
This has been another episode, hangout of As the World Turns Wednesday.
Okay.
Don't forget to come back. Friday we have our economics hangout. With that said, thank you all for joining.
All right.
All right, later.
All right. Peace.